Good morning, everybody, and I'm going to talk a little bit about cameras today. This next chapter is on using optics to look at different kinds of instruments. So the first series of videos will be on the camera and the eye, and the next series of videos, which will go tomorrow, will be on magnifiers, telescopes, microscopes, those kinds of instruments. So the first thing to consider when I am talking about a camera is that what I'm trying to do is take an object that's usually fairly far away and create an image on either film or a CCD if it's a digital camera, which is fairly close to the lens. So basically the thin lens equation applies here. So 1 over F equals 1 over I plus 1 over O. And typically, focal lengths and the image distance are going to be on the order of 50 millimeters in this case. So what are the major considerations when it comes to creating a camera? Well, one is I've got to have the appropriate lens to take a picture at a distance, and that just uses the thin lens equation. But there is one more technical aspect, and that is not only do I need to be able to focus that image, but I need enough light to be able to take the picture. And oftentimes, when I have a camera, the big pieces of instrumentation that exist are around the lens, which is fixed, and then the F number and the exposure time. So what I need to make sure is that I have enough light that comes in to take that picture. So the first thing is the F number, and the F number has to do with how much light is allowed in through the aperture, which is sort of a plate in front of the lens that will allow in different amounts of light. And F number is defined as the focal length divided by the diameter of the lens, and all of these values are going to be in meters. So when I do that, I end up with F numbers that are on the order of integer values because the diameter of the opening is small compared to the focal length F. And I end up with F numbers that look like, say, 2, 4, and so on. And they don't actually double every time. They go up by a factor square root of 2 because as I increase the radius, what is important for the light is the area, and the area is pi r squared. So that's how you calculate F number. F number is also important because it determines the depth of field, which is a more complicated idea in photography that basically says that if I want to take a picture of the room and I want the whole room to be in focus, I need to be able to have images in the background be in focus enough and images in the foreground to be in focus enough that the picture as a whole looks in focus. And to accomplish this, we need to use small F numbers because this really lets the it minimizes the amount of bending from the edges of the lens. The other important piece of information is how long the shutter speed is. So the shutter speed has to do with how long this aperture is open. And there are manual controls, but aside from that, usually we end up with something that are on the order of, say, half a second to, oftentimes it goes up to something like 1/3600th of a second. And if I'm taking a picture of a landscape, I can use this slow shutter speed, where if I'm taking a picture of a person running for, say, sports photography, I've got to use this high shutter speed because I don't want my picture to be blurry. So I have these two different aspects in play. And I can get more light by increasing the F number, which increases or decreases the diameter. So that gives me less light. So as this goes up, I get less light. And as this goes up, I get more light. And for different applications, you want different combinations of shutter speed and F number. So if I'm taking a landscape, I might use a very small F number to give me a very good field of depth and a very long shutter speed because my landscape doesn't have a lot of motion. Whereas when I'm talking about a sports image, I'm going to use a larger F number and a shorter shutter speed, so my image isn't blurry, but because of that, the person or object I'm focusing on is in focus, but the foreground and background aren't. And that gives us our picture of a camera. So again, the goal in big pictures is to use the thin lens equation to understand where the object is or what focal length I need to achieve an image, where the fixed photoplate or CCD is. And then beyond that, I have these more complicated aspects of shutter speed and F number to determine the amount of light that comes in. So the smaller the F number, the less light, or the more light, but the worse the field of depth. The shorter the shutter speed, the more light, but the more likely it is for my image to become blurred.